You think you know the story of Noah's Ark, two of every animal, rain for 40 days and 40 nights, a rainbow at the end, a simple children's story painted on nursery walls with smiling giraffes poking their heads out of a cartoonish boat. But tonight you're going to discover what it was really like. Because if you had actually been there, sealed inside that massive wooden vessel with your family and hundreds of animals, you wouldn't have lasted a single day. Not because you're weak, not because you lack faith, but because the reality of Noah's Ark was so far beyond anything we've been told, so physically demanding, so psychologically crushing, so utterly overwhelming to every single one of your senses that even imagining it correctly is almost impossible. Picture this: you're locked in darkness so complete you can't see your own hand. The smell of animal waste is so strong it burns your nostrils and makes you gag with every breath. The noise, a cacophony of roars, bleats, howls, and screeches that never, ever stops. The rocking of the vessel makes you constantly nauseous. You can't leave. You can't open a window for fresh air. You can't step outside for a break. And this isn't for a day, or a week, or even a month. You're in there for over a year. Tonight I'm going to walk you through every single detail. The construction process with its toxic pitch that coated your skin and filled your lungs. The moment the animals arrived and chaos descended. The sound of the door sealing shut, knowing everyone you've ever known is outside, about to die. The routines that kept you sane. The breaking points. The tiny moments of beauty in the darkness. The psychological warfare of endless waiting. And after our main journey, I have 3 more stories for you. Stories about the forgotten women of the Ark, whose names we don't even know. The first sacrifice on dry land that changed everything. And the dark family secret that fractured Noah's family almost immediately after their salvation. So get comfortable. Welcome, dear friend. Welcome to this space of rest and wonder. Whether you're listening in the deep of night, unable to sleep, or you're winding down from a long day, you're exactly where you need to be. Thank you for being here. Thank you for trusting me with these next few hours as we journey together into one of the most remarkable stories in human history. Take a moment now to adjust your pillows. Settle deeper into your bed. Let your shoulders drop away from your ears. Uncurl your toes. Soften your jaw. You don't have to do anything right now except listen. And even that you can do imperfectly. If you drift off in the middle of a sentence, that's exactly what this is for. Here's what I want you to know before we begin. You have complete permission to fall asleep at any point in this journey. This isn't a test. You don't need to remember anything. You don't need to stay awake to be polite. In fact, the greatest compliment you could give me is the sound of your breathing deepening, slowing, as you drift away into rest. This story is designed to carry you gently toward sleep. The pacing will be slow and intentional. The details will be rich and layered, giving your mind something to focus on instead of your own swirling thoughts. And the narrative will flow like a river, always moving, always there to hold you. Some of you might make it through the entire journey. Others might fall asleep during the construction phase, or while we're discussing daily routines in the Ark, or perhaps during one of the many stories at the end. Wherever you drift off is perfect, so breathe with me now, in through your nose. Hold it gently ... and out through your mouth. One more time. In ... hold ... and release. Good. You're doing beautifully. Here's what lies ahead of you tonight. We'll start at the very beginning, in the pre-flood world, watching as Noah and his family undertake an impossible construction project. You'll feel the weight of the tools in your hands, smell the pungent pitch used to seal the wood, and hear the mockery of neighbors who think this old man has lost his mind. Then the animals arrive. We'll explore how they came, where they were housed, and the absolute chaos of trying to organize predators and prey in a confined space with nothing but ancient technology and faith. The door will close. God himself will seal it. And 7 days of terrible waiting will begin before the first drops of rain fall. We'll walk through the daily routines that kept Noah's family from losing their minds, the feeding schedules, the waste management, the sleep shifts, the marking of time without sun or moon, the darkness broken only by precious lamplight. You'll understand the psychological toll of weeks becoming months, the family tensions, the doubts, the small mercies, the moments when hope flickered and nearly died, and then, finally, the signs of hope, the raven, the dove, the olive leaf, the door opening to a world scoured completely clean. After that, if you're still with me, we have 3 intimate stories: the forgotten wives who became mothers of nations, the altar of sacrifice that established the covenant, and the dark incident with Ham that reminds us even the saved are broken. But you don't need to worry about any of that right now. Right now, all you need to do is close your eyes. Take one more deep breath, and let me transport you back in time to a world about to be washed away, to a family about to be tested beyond measure, to an ark that would become both prison and salvation. Let's begin. You're standing in the ancient world before the flood, and you're watching an old man build something that makes absolutely no sense. His name is Noah. He's 600 years old, though in this time before the flood, that's not as unusual as it sounds. People lived longer then, centuries longer. But even so, Noah is old. His hands are gnarled and weathered. His back curves slightly from decades of labor. His face is deeply lined, carved by sun and wind, and the weight of a message no one else believes. And that message is this: build an ark, a massive boat, because a flood is coming that will destroy everything. You can hear the neighbors laughing, mocking, jeering as they pass by this construction site that's been going on for decades. Some scholars believe it took between 55 and 75 years to build the ark. Imagine, an entire lifetime of work for most people, and every single day being told you're insane. But let's talk about the ark itself, because the dimensions are staggering. 300 cubits long, 50 cubits wide, 30 cubits high. Now, a cubit is approximately 18 inches, the length from your elbow to your fingertip. So let's translate that into measurements you understand. This boat is 450 feet long, 75 feet wide, 45 feet high. To put that in perspective, it's longer than a football field. It's as tall as a 4-story building. This isn't a little boat. This isn't even a normal boat. This is a massive ocean-going vessel being built by a family with nothing but ancient tools and an impossible instruction manual from God. And you're part of that family. You're there day after day, year after year, building. Feel the wood in your hands. This is gopher wood, the Bible tells us, though scholars still debate what that actually means. Some think it's cypress, Others suggest cedar or pine. The Hebrew word appears nowhere else in Scripture, so we simply don't know. But whatever it is, it's strong, dense, heavy, and you're cutting it, shaping it, hauling it, positioning it. Your hands are covered in splinters. Your muscles ache in places you didn't know you had muscles. Your back throbs at the end of each day. This is manual labor at a scale that would break most modern people within hours. But the worst part, the pitch. Genesis tells us the ark was to be covered, inside and out, with pitch. Now here's something fascinating. The Hebrew word used here is kafir, which means to cover, to coat. But it's the same root word used throughout the Old Testament for atonement, to atone, to cover sin. There's a theological depth here that's breathtaking, but right now you're just trying to survive working with this substance. Pitch is basically ancient tar. It's made from heating tree resin until it becomes a thick, sticky, waterproofing material, and working with it is absolutely miserable. First, there's the heat. You have to keep it hot enough to spread, which means you're working near fires and whatever the weather is, heating this substance in large pots until it's liquid enough to apply. Then there's the application. You're taking this hot, sticky material and spreading it across every surface of the ark. It gets on your hands, your arms, your clothes, your face. It's in your hair, under your fingernails. It doesn't wash off easily. It stains everything it touches. And the smell, oh, the smell. It's acrid and chemical, and it fills your nose and throat and lungs until you feel like you'll never smell anything clean again. Some days you can't eat because the smell has saturated everything, including your sense of taste. But you keep working, because Noah says God told him to build this. And even though you sometimes wonder, even though the doubt creeps in during the quiet moments, you keep applying pitch to wood that's being shaped into something the world has never seen. The ark has 3 decks, 3 levels. The bottom deck, the middle deck, and the upper deck. Each level has to be constructed, reinforced, connected. The engineering required is remarkable. How do you support that much weight? How do you make sure it's balanced properly so it won't capsize? How do you create a structure that can withstand not just rain, but what's coming, the violence of waters that will cover the entire earth? You don't know exactly how high the water will rise. Noah just knows it's coming. So you build and you trust, and you listen to the guidance that God gives your father-in-law, this old man who talks to an invisible God while everyone else worships idols and lives wickedly. The door is positioned on the side. One door, just one. You're building in the only entrance and exit, and somewhere in your mind you're aware that once it's shut, there's no other way out. No emergency exit. No backup plan. At the very top there's a window. Well, the Hebrew word is sohar, and scholars debate whether it's a window or perhaps some kind of opening for light. It's to be 1 cubit high, running around the top of the ark, 18 inches. That's your ventilation system for a vessel that will house your family and hundreds of animals. 18 inches of opening at the very top of a 45-foot-high boat. Let that sink in for a moment. Think about the air circulation. Think about the heat that will build up. Think about the smells that will accumulate. That tiny opening is supposed to be enough. Inside, you're building rooms, compartments, storage areas, places for animals, places for food, places for water storage. The logistics are overwhelming. How much food does an elephant eat? How much does a lion need? What about birds, reptiles, insects? And you're building all of this by hand. Every plank, every joint, every sealed seam. Some days your faith feels strong. You remember why you're doing this. You think about the wickedness you see around you, the violence, the corruption, the way humanity has twisted everything good that God created. You remember that God is just, and this is judgment, but it's also mercy because He's saving a remnant. Other days you just want it to be over. You want to stop building and go back to normal life. Except normal life is wicked and broken, and there's no going back anyway. The years stretch on. Your children grow up on this construction site. They learn their numbers by counting cubits. They learn their strength by hauling lumber. They learn their faith by watching their grandfather Noah refuse to give up, day after day, year after year, decade after decade. And slowly and possibly, the ark takes shape. It rises from the ground like a massive wooden mountain. It dominates the landscape. People come from distant places just to see this absurd thing that Noah is building. Some laugh, some shake their heads in pity. Some get angry as if the very existence of the ark is a judgment on their lifestyle, which of course it is. Finally, after decades of work, it's finished. The last piece of wood is placed. The last coating of pitch is applied. You stand back and look at this impossible thing you've built, and you feel a mixture of pride and terror, because now comes the hard part. Now you have to fill it with animals. Now you have to load provisions. Now you have to move your entire life into this wooden vessel. Now you have to wait for God to make the next move. And in your heart, there's a question you don't want to acknowledge. What if the flood never comes? What if you've wasted decades of your life? What if the neighbors are right and Noah is just a crazy old man? But you push that thought down. You choose faith over doubt. You prepare for what's coming. Because ready or not, the animals are about to arrive. It starts with the birds. You're finishing the last of the preparations inside the ark, organizing storage areas and double-checking the structural soundness of the animal pens you've built when you hear them. A sound that makes you stop mid-task and climb up to that small window at the top. The sky is darkening, but not with storm clouds. With wings, birds, hundreds of them, thousands of them, flying toward the ark in formations you've never seen before. Sparrows and eagles, doves and ravens, species you recognize and species you've never encountered. And they're not scattered or confused. They're coming with purpose, as if being guided by an invisible hand, which of course they are. Genesis tells us that the animals came to Noah. He didn't have to hunt them down. He didn't have to trap them. God brought them. And watching it happen, watching this supernatural gathering, the doubt that's been lurking in the back of your mind for years suddenly evaporates. This is real. This is happening. God is doing exactly what He said He would do. The birds arrive first, and you rush to guide them into the designated areas. You've built perches and nesting spaces and small compartments, but honestly, you weren't entirely sure how this would work. Now, as the birds simply find their places, as they settle in with an unnatural calm, you realize God is handling details you couldn't have planned for. Then come the smaller animals, rabbits hopping steadily toward the ark, foxes trotting in pairs, rodents of every variety streaming like small rivers toward the entrance. You stand at the door, and you're directing traffic except you barely need to. The animals know where to go. They move past you into the Ark, finding their compartments almost as if they've been here before. But then the larger animals start arriving, and the reality of what you're about to experience hits you like a physical force. You see them in the distance first, the elephants, massive and gray and moving with surprising speed. Behind them, giraffes with their impossibly long necks, rhinoceros, hippopotamus, bears, big cats, and your heart starts pounding because you suddenly remember you're about to be locked in a wooden box with lions. The predators arrive with the same supernatural calm as everything else. The lions walk past bleating sheep and don't even glance at them. The wolves pad by rabbits without interest. It's as if their very nature has been temporarily suspended, their hunting instinct quieted by the same divine hand that brought them here. But you know that won't last forever. At some point these animals will be themselves again, and you'll need to keep them separated, keep them fed, keep them from killing each other and you. The noise level is climbing. Each species adds its own voice to the growing symphony. Roars, howls, bleats, chirps, trumpeting, hissing. It builds and builds until you can barely hear yourself think. Your family is working frantically now. Noah is directing operations. Your wife is guiding smaller animals to their areas. Your brothers-in-law are handling the larger beasts. Everyone is covered in animal hair, dust, and sweat, and the questions are racing through your mind. How many animals are there? This is something people have debated for centuries. If you take every kind literally as every species, you'd need millions of animals. The Ark isn't big enough, but scholars point out that the Hebrew word is min, which probably means kind in a broader sense, like the cat kind or the dog kind. All the variations we see today could have come from a smaller number of representative animals, with diversity developing after the flood. Some estimates suggest around 16,000 animals. Others say fewer, perhaps 7,000. The Ark, with its 3 decks and massive size, could actually accommodate that. The math works, barely, but right now, as they keep coming, as the parade continues for what feels like hours, you're not thinking about math. You're thinking about the reality that you're going to be living with all of these creatures in close quarters for. You don't even know how long. The reptiles are perhaps the most unsettling. Snakes slithering past your feet. Lizards clinging to the wooden walls. Crocodiles moving with prehistoric slowness toward designated water areas you've prepared. You've never been this close to so many dangerous creatures, and yet here they are, docile and calm. For now. Some of the animals arrive in twos, 1 pair, male and female. These are the unclean animals, the ones that aren't used for sacrifice. But some arrive in groups of 7. 7 pairs of clean animals, the ones that can be used for food and offerings. This is how you'll survive. This is your future food supply, both during the flood and after. The insects come in swarms that make you flinch. Bees, flies, beetles, butterflies, spiders. You've prepared small sealed containers for them, but watching them arrive en masse is like something out of a nightmare. They fill the air, they land on your skin, they crawl and buzz and swarm until you're waving your hands constantly, just to keep them from covering your face. Your children are wide-eyed. They've grown up on this project, but this is different. This is the moment it becomes real. One of them asks you, How long will we be in here with all of them? And you don't have an answer, because Noah hasn't told you. Or maybe God hasn't told Noah. You just know the flood is coming, and you'll be in the ark until the water recedes. Days? Weeks? Months? You have no idea. The larger animals require special consideration. You've built reinforced stalls for the elephants. You've created spaces with higher ceilings for the giraffes. You've made sure the weight distribution won't cause the ark to list to one side. But theory and practice are different things. And as these massive creatures board the ark, you're making adjustments on the fly, shifting things, repositioning animals, trying to balance everything while also making sure no one gets trampled. A hippopotamus nearly crushes your foot. You jump back just in time, your heart racing. These animals are calm, yes, but they're still huge and heavy and potentially deadly. You'll need to be constantly vigilant. The smell is already building. Animal musk. Different species have different scents, and they're all mixing together in the confined space. You tell yourself you'll get used to it. You have to get used to it. By the time the last animals arrive, the sun is setting. You're exhausted. Every muscle in your body aches. Your voice is hoarse from shouting directions over the noise. Your clothes are filthy, torn in places from brushing against rough hides and sharp claws. But everyone is aboard. Every creature God wanted saved is now inside the ark. The pairs are settled. The groups of 7 are accounted for. You do a final count, walking through the 3 decks, checking each compartment. And then you see your family gathered near the entrance. Your wife, your brothers-in-law and their wives, your children, Noah and his wife, 8 humans, that's all. 8 people to care for thousands of animals. 8 people to survive whatever's coming. 8 people who will be responsible for repopulating the entire earth after the flood. The weight of that responsibility settles on you like a physical burden, but there's no time to process it, because Noah is moving toward the door, the massive door that's been standing open, the last connection to the outside world. And you realize with a jolt of fear, it's time to close it. It's time to seal yourself inside. You stand at the entrance of the ark, looking out at the world you've known your entire life. The sun is setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and gold. It's beautiful. It's the same sunset you've seen countless times, and yet now it feels different, because you know, deep in your bones, that you won't see many more sunsets, not for a long time. And when you do see them again, the entire world will be different. Your neighbors are out there, people you've known, some you've loved, some who've mocked you, all of them going about their evening routines, completely unaware that judgment is about to fall. You want to shout at them, warn them one more time, beg them to believe. But Noah has been preaching for decades, and no one listened. No one wanted to hear about sin and judgment and the need for righteousness. They wanted to continue in their wickedness, in their violence, in their corruption. And now it's too late for them. But that doesn't make it easier. You're about to be sealed inside while everyone you've ever known dies outside. The scope of that, the horror of that, is almost too much to comprehend. A few people have gathered to watch. They're not believers, they're spectators. Some are still laughing, making jokes about crazy Noah and his floating zoo. Others look vaguely uncomfortable, as if some part of them wonders, what if? But they won't come aboard. Pride won't let them. Disbelief won't let them. Their love for their sin won't let them. Noah stands beside you, his face lined with sorrow. He spent so many years warning them, preaching righteousness, offering them a chance to repent. But his role was always to build the ark and be faithful. Salvation is a choice each person makes, and they've made their choice. It's time, Noah says quietly, and together with your brothers-in-law, you begin to close the door. It's massive, heavy, designed to withstand unimaginable water pressure. Moving it requires all your strength. You push, muscles straining, feet sliding on the wooden floor, and slowly, slowly, it swings inward. The opening gets narrower. The outside world shrinks to a sliver. You catch a last glimpse of trees, of grass, of people, of the sky, and then it closes completely. The sound echoes through the ark, a deep, final boom that makes some of the animals stir restlessly. You stand there in the dimness, breathing hard from the effort, and you wait for your eyes to adjust. But they don't, not really, because there's almost no light. You've prepared oil lamps, and they're burning in various places throughout the ark, but their glow is weak, creating small pools of light surrounded by vast areas of shadow. The window at the top, that 18-inch opening, provides a bit of indirect light, but nothing like what you're used to. Your world has just become very small and very dark, and then something happens that makes your breath catch in your throat. You hear it, a sound from outside. It's hard to describe. Like a massive lock sliding into place. Like stone grinding against stone, except there's no lock on the ark. You didn't install one. There's just the door, which you've closed, but not sealed from the inside. Noah's eyes widen. God, he whispers, God has shut us in. Genesis 7:16 records it plainly, and the Lord shut him in. Think about that. God himself sealed the door. From the outside, this wasn't just a family closing up their boat. This was divine intervention. God making sure the door would hold. God making sure no one could get in, and equally important, that no one could get out. You're not just closed in, you're sealed in. For a moment, panic flutters in your chest. You can't leave. Even if you wanted to, even if you changed your mind, even if the ark started sinking, you cannot open that door. Only God can open it now. You're trapped by design, by divine instruction. Your salvation is now also your prison. The family stands together in the dim light, processing this reality. One of your sisters-in-law starts crying softly. Not from fear, exactly. More from the overwhelming weight of the moment. Everything has changed. There's no going back. Noah begins to pray. His voice is quiet but steady. He thanks God for his mercy. He asks for strength for what's ahead. He prays for the animals, for their safety. He prays for the people outside, even though he knows their fate is sealed. And as he prays, you become aware of the sounds around you. The animals are settling into their spaces. There's shuffling, rustling, occasional calls or cries. But underneath that, something else. A low, constant noise that you realize is simply the sound of hundreds of creatures breathing, inhaling and exhaling, the rhythm of life itself. It's actually soothing, in a way, rhythmic, constant. Your children are already exploring the ark by lamplight, even though they've helped build it. Everything feels different now that it's closed. The echoes sound different. The shadows fall differently. This is your home now. You make your way to the area you've designated for your family's living space. It's modest. A section of the upper deck with just enough room for sleeping pallets, some personal belongings, food storage. Privacy will be minimal. The family will be living on top of each other, but at least you're together. At least you're safe, or you will be once the flood comes. Except the flood hasn't come yet. The sky is clear outside. No clouds, no rain, no signs of the catastrophe Noah has been predicting. You suddenly realize that you could be in here for days before anything happens. You've closed yourself in, burned the last bridge to the outside world, and the weather is perfectly fine. What if the neighbors are right? What if nothing happens? You push the thought away, but it lingers like a shadow. Doubt, even now, even after everything you've seen, tries to creep in. That first night is strange beyond words. You try to sleep, but the sounds keep you awake. Animals you can't see in the darkness, making noises you can't identify. Something large shifting position. Something else calling out. Birds rustling on their perches. The constant background noise of breathing, moving, living. And the smell? Oh, the smell has already intensified. With the door closed, there's limited air circulation. The scents of different animals are mixing, concentrating. You breathe through your mouth and try not to think about what it will be like in a week or a month. Some of the animals are clearly stressed. They pace in their enclosures. They make distressed sounds. They're in an unnatural situation, confined in a wooden box, surrounded by creatures they'd normally avoid or hunt. The supernatural calm that brought them here hasn't completely removed their instincts. You do a round of the Ark before trying to sleep again. You check for any structural issues. Make sure no animals have escaped their designated areas. Confirm that the predators are securely contained. Everything seems to be holding. The Ark is sound. The animals are as calm as can be expected. But you're sealed in a wooden box with no way out, and nothing has happened yet. Genesis tells us that 7 days passed between when Noah entered the Ark and when the rain began. 7 days of waiting. 7 days of silence from the outside world. 7 days of doubt growing louder in your mind with each passing hour. What must that have been like? Especially for those who weren't Noah, who hadn't heard directly from God, who were taking everything on faith. You imagine the conversations, the whispered worries in the dark. What if Father is wrong? What if we've made a terrible mistake? But Noah remains calm, certain. He's heard from God, and he trusts that word completely. And so you wait, in the darkness, with the animals, sealed in by God himself, waiting for the world to end. It starts on the 7th day. You're going through your morning routine, feeding animals, checking water supplies, trying to establish some sense of normalcy in this bizarre situation. When you hear it, rain, but not ordinary rain, not the gentle patter you're used to. This is something else entirely. It sounds like thousands of drums all being beaten at once. A roar that starts soft and builds until it's almost deafening. Rain hammering against the Ark with such force that you can feel the vibrations through the wood. Everyone stops what they're doing. You look at each other in the dim lamplight. This is it. This is what you've been waiting for. What you've been dreading. The flood has begun. You make your way to the small window at the top, climbing the ladder Noah built, and you peer out into what has become a wall of water. You can't see more than a few feet, The rain is that dense. It's like looking into a waterfall, and then you realize something that makes your blood run cold. This isn't just rain from above. Genesis 7:11 tells us that all the fountains of the great deep burst forth, and the windows of the heavens were opened. The deep, the waters under the earth, they're erupting. You can hear it now underneath the sound of rain. A rumbling, a groaning from the earth itself. Somewhere out there, underwater sources are breaking through the surface. Geysers of water shooting into the sky. The ground splitting open and releasing water that's been trapped below. It's not just a storm. It's a complete undoing of the water systems God put in place during creation. The separation of waters above and below, the dry land appearing, all of it is being reversed. The world is returning to chaos. The ark begins to rock slightly, not much at first, just a gentle movement. But you realize what it means. There's enough water now that the ark is starting to lift, to float. You've been on boats before, small boats on rivers. You know what water feels like beneath you, but this is different. This vessel is massive, and it's not designed to be maneuvered. There's no sail, no oars, no rudder to steer with. You're completely at the mercy of the waters. The rocking increases. The ark shifts, tilts, levels out, tilts the other way. Your stomach lurches. Motion sickness hits you like a fist. You stumble, grab onto a support beam, and try not to vomit. All around you, animals are reacting. They feel the movement. They don't understand what's happening. The noise level increases as creatures cry out in fear and confusion. A horse whinnies desperately. Birds flutter against their enclosures. Something large may be one of the elephant's trumpets in distress. The sound is heartbreaking. Your wife appears beside you, her face pale in the lamplight. The children are scared, she says. They're asking if we're sinking. We're floating, you tell her, hoping you sound more confident than you feel. It's what the ark was designed to do. But even as you say it, the vessel lurches violently to one side. You both grab onto whatever's nearest. A water jug falls and shatters. Oil from a lamp spills and has to be quickly extinguished before it causes a fire. Fire in a wooden boat with no way to escape. That's a new terror you hadn't fully considered. You make your way through the ark, checking on animals, making sure nothing is broken loose. The rocking is getting worse. Waves must be forming outside, large ones. You try not to imagine how high the water has risen already, and then you hear something that will haunt you forever. Voices, faint, distant, but unmistakable. People outside, screaming. You freeze. Your heart stops. You don't want to hear this. You don't want to know what's happening beyond these walls. But you can't unhear it. They're screaming for help, pounding on the ark. You can hear the thuds now, fists or maybe tools striking the wood. Desperate, frantic, terror-filled screams of people who suddenly believe, now that it's too late. Noah, Noah, open the door. Please, we were wrong. Let us in. You recognize some of the voices. Neighbors. People who mocked you yesterday. They're out there, drowning, begging for mercy, and there's nothing you can do. Even if you wanted to open the door and part of you, the human part that can't stand to hear people dying, desperately wants to, you can't. God sealed it. From the outside, it won't open. Noah has moved to a corner of the ark, and he's praying with tears streaming down his face. He's not hard-hearted. He's not glad these people are dying, but he warned them for decades. He preached righteousness. He told them this was coming. They chose not to listen. The screaming continues for what feels like hours, but is probably less. And then gradually it fades. The pounding stops. The voices quiet. And you're left with just the sound of rain and the groaning of wood and the terrified animals. You sink to the floor, your back against the wooden wall, and you weep. For the people outside. For the world that's ending. For the innocents that died the moment you heard those screams. Your children ask what the sounds were. You tell them it was just a storm. They're too young to carry this burden. Let them keep their innocence a little longer. The violence of the water increases as the hours pass. The ark is being tossed now, truly tossed, like a toy in a bathtub. Except this bathtub is the entire world, and the water is rising higher and higher. You try to imagine what it looks like outside. The water covering the fields you used to walk through, rising past the trees, swallowing houses and towns and everything humanity has built. Genesis says the water rose 15 cubits above the highest mountains. That's over 22 feet. Enough to cover everything. Enough to ensure nothing survived. Nothing except what's in this ark. The days blur together. Rain continues. 40 days and 40 nights, though you lose count of the exact timing. Day and night become meaningless when you can't see the sun. You marked time by feeding schedules and sleep cycles, but it all runs together. The motion never stops, up and down, side to side. The constant rocking that makes your stomach churn and your head ache. You learn to move with it, to anticipate the shifts, to brace yourself before the next wave hits. Some of the animals have stopped eating. They're too stressed, too sick from the motion. You do your best to keep them alive, to coax them to take water at least, but you lose a few. It's inevitable. The smallest ones, the weakest ones. They simply can't survive the stress. You bury them in a designated area on the lowest deck, offering a quiet prayer each time. Even animal life is precious. Even these small creatures mattered to God. The rain finally stops on the 40th day. The sudden silence is almost shocking. You've grown so accustomed to the drumming that its absence feels wrong. But when you climb to the window and look out, you see gray sky instead of falling water. Phase 1 is over, but the water isn't receding. You're floating on an endless ocean. And according to what happens next in the story, you'll be floating for a long, long time. 150 days, Genesis tells us. That's how long the waters prevailed on the earth. 5 months of floating. 5 months of this. And you're only at day 40. If you're going to survive this, you need structure. You need routine. You need something to mark the passage of time and give meaning to each day. So the family develops a system. You wake, though wake is a relative term when you're sleeping in shifts and the darkness makes it hard to know what time it is. But you wake and you begin the feeding rounds. The animals need to eat. Different animals, different diets, different feeding schedules. It's a massive undertaking, and it consumes most of your waking hours. Start with the herbivores. You've stored grain in large clay vessels sealed with wax. Barley, wheat, dried corn. You measure out portions, trying to ration carefully because you don't know how long you'll need these supplies to last. The smell of the grain is one of the few pleasant smells in the ark. Clean, earthy, normal. You breathe it in deeply whenever you open a storage vessel. trying to clear your nose of the other smells. You carry buckets of grain to different enclosures. The horses eat, the cattle eat, the sheep and goats eat. They're efficient eaters, at least, adapted to processing plant matter. You can see their jaws working constantly, grinding away. The elephants require massive amounts of food. You've stored hay bales and bales of it, dried grass that takes up precious space but is necessary. Each elephant can eat several 100 pounds a day. You do the math in your head and try not to panic about whether you've stored enough. But God knew. God gave the instructions for the ark's size. Surely he factored in the food requirements. You have to believe that. The alternative is too terrifying. Next come the carnivores, and this is where it gets complicated. You can't just feed them live prey. That would be chaos, and you need those animals alive for breeding after the flood. So you've prepared dried meat, salted, preserved. Some of it is from the extra clean animals you brought aboard, the groups of 7 instead of 2. That's why there were extras. For food. The lions eat, the wolves eat, the bears eat. They're not thrilled with dried meat when their instincts scream for fresh prey, but it's enough. They survive on it. You approach the big cat's enclosure with caution every single time. Yes, there's a supernatural protection over the ark. Yes, God has kept the predators calm, but you're still a fragile human carrying meat to animals designed to kill. Your hands shake slightly as you slide the food through the gaps in the wooden barriers. The birds are easier, seeds, dried fruits. Insects for the ones that need them. You've collected and stored jars of dried crickets, moths, beetles. Opening these jars releases a musty smell, but the birds descend on them eagerly. Water is the next challenge. Every creature needs water, and you need a system to provide it without wasting your precious supply. You've designed a collection system. The rain that falls, and during those first 40 days, there was plenty runs down channels you've carved into the wood, leading to large collection barrels. You boil it before drinking or giving it to the animals. Can't risk sickness. Not here, not now. You make water rounds with buckets and ladles. Each animal gets what it needs. The system works barely, but it's exhausting. Your arms ache from carrying heavy buckets across 3 decks. Your back protests every time you bend to fill a trough. And then comes the worst part of the daily routine. The part no one talks about when they tell the cute children's story of Noah's Ark. Waste management. Animals produce waste. A lot of waste. And in a closed environment, that waste accumulates fast. Scholars have debated how Noah handled this. Some suggest slatted floors with the waste falling through to the lowest level. Others propose a system of drainage that somehow channeled waste overboard. The text doesn't tell us specifically, so we have to imagine. You've built the enclosures with slight slopes. Waste naturally flows to one area, and every day you and your family shovel. You scrape. You carry buckets of animal waste to a designated dumping area on the lowest deck, or perhaps you've rigged a system to push it overboard through small openings in the hull. The smell is indescribable. Ammonia from urine burns your nostrils and makes your eyes water. The solid waste creates a thick, heavy stench that clings to your clothes and your skin and your hair. You try breathing through your mouth, but then you can taste it. You tie cloth around your face, trying to filter the air. It helps a little. But nothing truly protects you from the reality of living in close quarters with hundreds of animals. This becomes your new normal. Your sense of smell adapts, or maybe it just gives up. After a few weeks, you barely notice anymore. It's just the way things are. The family works in shifts, 2 people on feeding duty, 2 on water duty, 2 on waste removal, 2 resting. Then you rotate. Every 6 hours or so, though time is measured imprecisely by the burn rate of oil lamps and the feeling of exhaustion in your bones. Sleep is precious and difficult. The motion of the ark makes it hard to rest deeply. You're always partially aware of the rocking, the creaking, the animal sounds. You sleep in short bursts, waking often, never fully rested. The sleeping area is cramped. 8 people sharing a space barely large enough for 4. You sleep in shifts here too. Some on pallets on the floor, some propped against walls. Privacy is a memory. You hear everything. Snoring, sleep talking, crying when someone thinks the others are asleep. Personal hygiene becomes a challenge. You can't waste water on bathing, so you use small amounts to wipe down with cloths, trying to stay as clean as possible. Your hair becomes matted. Your skin develops a layer of grime. Your fingernails are perpetually dirty, no matter how much you scrub them. The women's monthly cycles create additional challenges. You've brought rags that can be washed and reused, but water is precious, and the process is uncomfortable and embarrassing in such close quarters. Marking time is important for sanity. Noah keeps a record. He scratches marks on a wooden beam, 1 mark for each day, groupings of 7 for weeks. You watch the marks accumulate and try not to think about how many more might be added before you see dry land again. The family develops rhythms of conversation, morning gatherings where Noah reads from the scriptures he's memorized or written down, stories of creation, of Adam and Eve, of the promises God has made. These moments ground you. Remind you that there's purpose to all this. Afternoon work is done mostly in silence. Everyone is too tired, too focused on tasks. But evening, after the last feeding, there's time to talk quietly, to share concerns, to encourage each other. Your wife tells stories to the children, tales of the world before the flood. Good memories. Happy times. She's trying to preserve something of the old world for them, even though that world is gone forever. Your brothers-in-law discuss plans for after the flood, what they'll plant first, how they'll build houses, where they might settle. It's hope in the form of practical planning. You need that hope. Noah and his wife often sit together in silence. A comfortable silence earned through decades of marriage. They don't need words. Their presence is enough. Conflict arises sometimes. It's inevitable. Someone snaps at someone else over a small thing. Tensions flare. Living in such close quarters under such stress, with no escape, people crack occasionally. But you've learned to forgive quickly, to apologize, to remember that you're all in this together. You're all you have. Fighting serves no purpose. The animals become familiar friends. You learn their individual personalities. This horse is nervous. That goat is friendly. The elephant in the corner is gentle despite its size. You find yourself talking to them as you work. They can't answer, but somehow it helps. Some animals thrive despite the circumstances. Others merely survive. You do your best to care for each one, knowing their precious cargo. The future of their species depends on them surviving this voyage. Food preparation for the family is simple. Dried fish, bread made from stored grain, dried fruits, nuts, nothing fresh, nothing with much flavor. You eat because you must, not because you enjoy it. The sameness of the diet becomes oppressive. You dream of fresh vegetables, ripe fruit, meat that isn't dried and salted. Water tastes flat. Stored water, even collected rainwater, develops a stale taste after a while. You drink it warm because there's no way to keep it cold. You try not to think about cool, fresh spring water. Medical issues arise. Someone cuts themselves on rough wood. You clean the wound with boiled water and wrap it with clean cloth, praying it doesn't get infected. Someone develops a rash from the constant dampness and lack of proper bathing. Someone's old injury flares up from all the physical labor. You have limited medical supplies, herbs you've dried and stored. Basic knowledge passed down through generations. You do your best, but you're not healers. You're just survivors trying to make it through each day. The routine becomes both prison and salvation. It's monotonous, exhausting, mind-numbing in its repetition, but it's also what keeps you sane. Structure in chaos, purpose in confinement, meaning in meaninglessness. Each day you feed the animals. You provide water. You clean waste. You check structural integrity. You maintain the lamps. You mark another day on Noah's beam. And slowly, impossibly slowly, time passes. The darkness is what gets to you most. You've never experienced darkness like this. In your old life, before the ark, there was always some light. Moonlight, starlight, the glow of distant fires. Your eyes could always adjust enough to make out shapes, to navigate, to find your way. But here, in the ark, the darkness is thick, physical, oppressive. The only light comes from your oil lamps. Small flames flickering in clay vessels. You've brought oil, lots of it, but it's still a precious resource that must be rationed. So you burn only what you absolutely need. Most of the ark exists in complete darkness most of the time. When you move through the dark areas, you navigate by touch and memory. Your hands trail along wooden walls. Your feet learn where each board is, where the gaps are, where to step. You develop a mental map of the space, but it's never perfect. You still stumble, still bruise your shins on unseen objects, still occasionally get turned around in the disorienting blackness. The window at the top, the Sahar, is your only connection to natural light. And there's been debate for centuries about what exactly this was. The Hebrew word Sahar is unusual. Some translations say window, others say roof or opening. Some ancient Jewish commentaries suggest it wasn't a window at all, but rather a luminous stone that provided light inside the ark. The Talmud records a fascinating tradition that God gave Noah a precious stone that glowed with its own light, brighter during the day and dimmer at night, allowing those in the ark to distinguish between day and night. Whether that's literal or metaphorical, you don't know. But you do know that there's a small opening at the very top of the ark, 1 cubit high, running around the perimeter, 18 inches. And through that opening comes whatever natural light manages to penetrate. During the day, a gray glow filters down from above. It's not bright. It's not even what you'd call adequate. But it's something. A reminder that the sun still exists somewhere beyond the clouds and rain. During the night, that glow disappears entirely. and you're left with absolute darkness, except for your lamps. This affects you more than you expected. Your body doesn't know what time it is. Your circadian rhythms, those internal clocks that tell you when to sleep and wake, become confused. You find yourself exhausted at times when you think it should be morning, and wide awake when you think it should be night. Some of the family members develop what you might call depression, though you don't have that word. They become listless, unmotivated. They stare at nothing. The lack of sunlight, the lack of proper day-night cycles, it does something to the human spirit. Noah notices. He makes sure to gather everyone near the window during the daylight hours when possible, to let that gray light fall on faces, to remind bodies that day exists. The animals are affected too. Birds that normally wake with sunrise become confused. They call at odd hours. Their mating behaviors get disrupted. Some stop laying eggs. Others become aggressive or withdrawn. Creatures that normally hibernate don't know what to do. Their instincts tell them to sleep through winter, but there's no winter here. No seasons, just endless dim sameness. You learn to treasure the lamplight. The warm glow of a flame becomes something beautiful. You catch yourself staring at the lamps, mesmerized by the flicker and dance of fire. It's alive in a way that's comforting. Each lamp requires maintenance, trimming the wick, refilling the oil, keeping the flame steady. This becomes a meditative task, something you do carefully, with full attention, because the alternative is darkness, and darkness here is not your friend. You develop a hierarchy of light. The main living area gets the most lamps. The animal areas get fewer, just enough to see for feeding and care. Long stretches of corridor exist in complete darkness, traversed only when necessary. Oil supply becomes a constant worry. You calculate and recalculate. How much do you use per day? How many days has it been? How many days might be left? Do you have enough? God provided the measurements for the ark. Surely he factored in the oil needed for lighting. Surely. But in the dark hours, doubt creeps in. What if you run out? What if you're left in complete darkness with panicking animals and no way to navigate or work? So you ration more strictly. You learn to work in dimmer light. You memorize paths so you can traverse them with minimal illumination. You adapt because adaptation is survival. There are moments of beauty, though, unexpected moments when the lamp light catches something just right. A spider's web stretched between beams, droplets of condensation clinging to it, catching the light like tiny jewels. You stop to stare at it. This delicate thing created in darkness, shimmering with collected moisture. It's beautiful. Or the way lamplight reflects in an animal's eyes. That glow, that shine. Dozens of eyes watching you as you pass through with your lamp. It should be eerie, but instead it feels like companionship. You're not alone. All these creatures are here with you. The children are fascinated by shadows. They make shadow puppets with their hands in the lamplight. Animals, birds, simple entertainments, but precious. The sound of children laughing in this place of confinement is like medicine. Your wife braids her hair by lamplight, her hands moving with practiced ease, even in the dim glow. You watch her sometimes, the way the light catches the curves of her face, and you remember why you're doing this, why you said yes when Noah invited your family into the ark, because you love her, because you want her to survive, because whatever comes after, you want to face it together. Noah reads Scripture by lamplight, squinting at the texts he's preserved. His old eyes strain in the dimness, but he persists. These words are important. They're the of where you came from, who God is, what He's promised. In this place where everything feels temporary and unstable, these words are anchor. You develop a deep appreciation for light itself. You've taken it for granted your whole life. The sun rises, the world is bright. You go about your day, simple, but now you understand that light is a gift. Every flame is precious. Every dim ray filtering through the window is cause for gratitude. Genesis says God's first words in creation were, "Let there be light." And you understand now, viscerally, why that was first. Because darkness is chaos. Darkness is confusion. Darkness is isolation and fear. Light is order. Light is clarity. Light is hope. So you tend your lamps carefully. You gather near the window when you can. You make the most of every tiny source of illumination. And you wait for the day when you'll see the sun again. When you'll stand in bright daylight and feel warmth on your face and see colors clearly and watch shadows move across the ground as the sun travels across the sky. You wait for real light, not the dim survival light of oil lamps, not the gray filtered light through a small opening, but full, glorious, abundant light, the kind God spoke into existence on day one, the kind you'll need to rebuild a world. It happens around day 70, or maybe day 80. You've lost exact count despite Noah's marks on the beam. The days blur together into one long, continuous experience of sameness. Someone breaks. It's one of your brothers-in-law, a good man, a faithful man, someone who's worked as hard as anyone to keep the ark functioning and the animals alive. But something in him just snaps. You find him in one of the dark corridors, sitting with his back against the wall, rocking slightly. Tears are streaming down his face. He's muttering to himself, "It's never going to end. We're going to die here. The water will never go down. This is it. This is our tomb." You sit beside him. Don't say anything at first. Just sit, because part of you has had the same thoughts. Part of you has wondered if Noah heard God wrong, if maybe the water will keep rising forever, if maybe you'll just float until you run out of food and then slowly starve. These are the thoughts that come in the darkness, the doubts that creep in during the endless, repetitive days. "Tell me it's going to be okay," he says finally. "Tell me we're going to get out of here." And you want to. You want to give him assurance. Promise him that yes, definitely, this will end and you'll see land again and everything will be fine. But you can't know that. Not with certainty. You believe it. You hope for it. But you don't know it. So instead you say Noah heard from God. God wouldn't save us just to let us die in here. There's purpose to this. There has to be. How much longer, he asks. How much longer can we survive this? You don't have an answer. The incident shakes the family. If one person can break, anyone can. You're all stretched thin, all operating at the edge of your capacity, all one bad day away from similar collapse. Noah calls a family meeting in the main living area. All 8 of you gathered in the lamplight. "I know this is hard," he begins. His voice is heavy with his own weariness. "I know it feels endless. I know you're tired and scared and wondering if it will ever end." He pauses, looks at each face. "I don't know how much longer. God hasn't told me, But he did tell me to build this ark. He did bring the animals. He did shut us in. He doesn't do things halfway. If he started this, he'll finish it. But what if someone starts? What if it's the enemy? Noah interrupts gently. What if keeps us from trusting what we know is true? We know God is faithful. We know he keeps his promises. Everything else is just fear talking. It's a good speech. It helps. But it doesn't make the days easier. The psychological toll manifests in different ways for different people. One of the women develops an obsessive need for cleanliness. She scrubs the same areas over and over, trying to fight back against the dirt and smell and chaos. She can't control much, but she can control her small space, and she does so with increasingly frantic energy. One of the children has nightmares, wakes up screaming about drowning, about the ark sinking, about monsters in the dark. You hold him and whisper reassurances while he shakes and cries. Your wife becomes very quiet. She still does her work, still cares for the family, but there's a distance in her eyes. She's somewhere else mentally, and you worry about her, but don't know how to help. You notice changes in yourself too. Irritability, snapping at people over small things, a constant low-level anxiety that sits in your chest like a stone, trouble focusing, memory lapses. This is what prolonged stress does to humans, what confinement does, what uncertainty does. The family develops coping mechanisms, some healthy and some less so. Prayer becomes more fervent, more desperate. Not the rote prayers of routine, but the raw crying out of people at the end of their rope. God, please let this end soon. Please show us a sign. Please give us hope. Storytelling increases. You tell the old stories over and over. Creation, Eden, the promise of a Savior who will one day crush the serpent's head. You talk about the world that was and imagine the world that will be. Some people withdraw. They do their work but spend their free time alone in dark corners, processing internally, trying to hold themselves together through isolation. Others become clingy. They need constant contact, constant reassurance. They can't be alone even for a moment. The close quarters that were uncomfortable before become suffocating. You're never alone. Never have privacy. Never have silence. Always someone is nearby, breathing, moving, existing in your space. Small annoyances become major irritations. The way someone chews, the sound of someone's breathing, the way someone always leaves their tools in the wrong place. These tiny things, which wouldn't matter in normal life, become sources of genuine anger. Conflicts erupt more frequently. Voices are raised. Accusations are thrown. Old resentments surface. You're all too tired, too stressed, too worn down to be your best selves. But you're also too confined to stay angry. You can't storm off, can't take a break from each other, so you're forced to reconcile, to forgive, to move forward, because the alternative is living in constant conflict with people you can't escape. The animals sense the tension. They become more restless, more aggressive. Feeding times become more dangerous as animals that had been calm start showing signs of their predatory nature returning. One of the big cats takes a swipe at you through the bars of its enclosure. Claws barely miss your arm. It's a warning, a reminder that the supernatural protection isn't absolute, or maybe it's wearing thin as time stretches on. Noah's leadership is tested. People question his decisions. Why did we ration the food this way? Why are we working on this schedule? How do you know God said that? He bears it with patience, but you can see the weight on him. He's responsible for everyone. He's the one who heard from God. If this fails, it's his fault. That's an enormous burden to carry. There are moments of grace, though. Small mercies that keep you going. Someone finds a jar of honey they'd forgotten about. You pass it around, each person getting just a small taste. The sweetness explodes on your tongue after months of bland food. It's almost painful how good it is. Someone cries from the joy of it. The children discover a mouse that's snuck aboard somehow, not one of the official pairs, just a stowaway. They name it. Make it a pet. Watching them play with this tiny creature, laughing at its antics, reminds you that innocence can survive even here. One evening, someone starts singing, an old song from before the flood. Others join in. Soon all 8 of you are singing together, your voices rising in the dim lamplight, echoing through the ark. The animals quiet down as if listening. For those few minutes, you remember what it feels like to be human, and not just surviving machines. Your wife finds you one night and takes your hand. Doesn't say anything, just holds your hand in the darkness. That simple touch, that connection, it's enough to keep you going another day. You realize something important. You won't survive this alone. None of you will. You need each other. The family is what's keeping you sane. The shared burden makes it bearable. So you make a conscious choice. Every day you'll find one way to serve someone else, one way to encourage, one way to help carry someone else's load. It's not much, but it's enough. And slowly, day by day, you keep going, keep functioning, keep working, keep believing, because what else can you do? Give up? That's not an option. So you hold on, you hold each other. You hold on to faith that feels threadbare and worn, but hasn't quite broken yet. And you wait. Genesis 7:24 records it simply, and the waters prevailed on the earth 150 days. 150 days, 5 months, 21 weeks, nearly half a year. Let that sink in for a moment. You've been floating in this wooden box for 5 months. 5 months of the same sounds, the same smells, the same wooden walls, the same 8 people, the same routine. 5 months. Your body has changed in ways you didn't expect. Muscle atrophy has set in. Despite all the physical labor of caring for animals, you're not getting the kind of movement you used to. No walking long distances, no running, no full-body work. Your legs have become weaker. Your arms still have strength from carrying buckets, but your core, your legs, they're not what they were. Your skin is pale, sickly pale. Without regular sunlight, you've lost your color. You look like a creature that's been living underground, which, in a way, you have been. Vitamin D deficiency affects your mood, your energy, your bone health. You don't know about vitamins. That knowledge won't exist for thousands of years, but you know something is wrong. You feel weak, tired. Your bones ache. The diet of dried food has taken its toll. Your gums bleed sometimes. Your teeth feel loose. Scurvy is beginning to set in from lack of fresh fruits and vegetables. Again, you don't know the medical term, but you know you're not healthy. Your hair has grown long and unkempt. Your beard, if you're a man, is wild. The women's hair is braided tightly to keep it manageable, but it's dry and brittle from lack of proper care. Everyone has lost weight. The rationed food isn't quite enough. You're not starving, but you're thinner, gaunt. Your clothes hang loosely on frames that used to fill them, and the food itself has become almost unbearable. You've been eating the same dried fish, the same hard bread, the same nuts and dried fruit for months. Your taste buds have grown numb to it. You eat mechanically, without pleasure, just fueling your body to keep going. Sometimes you try to remember what fresh food tastes like. Ripe fruit bursting with juice, crisp vegetables, warm bread just baked. But the memories are fading. You can't quite recall the exact taste, the exact texture. It's slipping away like a dream. Water tastes stale, flat, wrong. You drink it warm because there's no cold. You long for cold water, for ice, for anything with temperature variation. The monotony is crushing. Every day is identical to the last. Wake, feed animals, clean waste, maintain the ark, eat, sleep in shifts, repeat. There's no variation, no surprise, no change of any kind. You know every inch of the ark, every board, every beam. You could navigate it blindfolded. In fact, you often do navigate it in near total darkness. You know every animal by sight. You've named them all, even though you probably shouldn't get attached. You know which horse is nervous, which goat is friendly, which bird sings at odd hours. You know every member of your family too intimately. You know their sleep patterns, their habits, their quirks, their flaws. There are no secrets here, no privacy, no mystery. Sometimes you catch yourself staring at nothing. Your mind just empty, not thinking, not feeling, just existing in a state of numbness. This is survival mode. Your brain has shut down non-essential functions to conserve energy. Creativity, curiosity, joy. These take energy, and you don't have energy to spare. The relationships in the family have deepened in strange ways. You know these people better than you ever thought possible. You've seen them at their worst, at their breaking points, at their most vulnerable, and they've seen you the same way. There's an intimacy to that, a bond forged through shared suffering. You'll never be able to explain to anyone else what this was like, but these 7 other people, they know. They were there. They survived it with you. At the same time, there's a brittleness to the relationships. You've hurt each other, said things in anger or exhaustion that can't be unsaid, created wounds that will take time to heal, even after this is over. The children are growing up in this environment. They're developing their understanding of the world while confined in a floating box. What will that do to them? How will this shape their personalities, their fears, their faith? They don't remember much of the world before the flood. The oldest might have some memories, but the younger ones? The ark is their world. This is normal to them. You wonder if they'll even adjust to life on solid ground when it finally comes. Time has become meaningless and everything simultaneously. Each day drags, each hour feels eternal. And yet when you look back, 5 months have passed in what feels like a blur. You've lost track of seasons. Was it spring when you entered? Summer? You think maybe it was spring, but you're not sure. And now what season is it? With no sun, no stars, no changing weather beyond the rain that finally stopped, you have no reference points. Noah's marks on the beam are the only record, and you check them obsessively, counting, recounting. trying to find hope in the accumulation of days, because each day passed is one day closer to the end. But closer to what end? When? How will you know? The animals have settled into their own version of monotony. The initial panic and stress has given way to a dull routine. They eat, they sleep, they exist. Like you, they're just surviving. Some of the animals have bonded with family members. The elephant responds to your wife's voice. One of the dogs, yes, the wolf kind, has a pair that acts remarkably dog-like, follows one of the children everywhere. These connections are precious. Reminders that relationship is possible even here. You've become expert at reading the ark's movements. You know what each creak means, what each groan indicates. You can feel changes in the water's movement, tell when waves are larger or smaller, sense shifts in wind direction even though you can't see outside. The ark has become an extension of your body. You're so attuned to it that you wake from sleep if something sounds wrong, if a board creaks in an unusual way, if the rocking pattern changes. You're constantly checking for leaks. Water seeping in would be catastrophic. You inspect seams, feel for dampness, test the pitch coating. So far, everything holds. The ark is sound. But the fear never quite goes away. What if there's a slow leak you haven't found? What if the wood is weakening? What if one day the structure just fails? You push these thoughts away. Focus on what you can control. The daily tasks, the animal care, the maintenance. One day at a time. Except the days never end. They just keep coming. One after another, after another. You've stopped asking, when will this end? Because no one knows. Even Noah doesn't know. God hasn't told him, so asking is pointless. It just feeds the despair. Instead, you focus on right now. Right now, you need to feed this animal. Right now, you need to trim this lamp. Right now, you need to check on your family member who's struggling. The present moment. That's all you can handle. The past is gone, drowned under miles of water. The future is uncertain and unknowable. But this moment, right now, you can survive. And so you do, day after day after day. In the floating prison, that's also your salvation. In the ark, that's both curse and blessing. In the darkness that occasionally holds flickers of light. You survive, because that's what survivors do. Genesis 8:1 begins with 3 words that change everything. But God remembered Noah. Not that God had forgotten. God doesn't forget. But there's something about that phrase, God remembered, that signals a shift, an end to the silence, a movement toward resolution, and you feel it before you understand it. One day 150, though you don't know it, yet something changes. The water stops rising. You can't see this, obviously. You're inside a wooden box floating on an endless ocean. But somehow you sense it. The ark's movement feels different. Subtly different, but different. And then a wind begins to blow. You hear it first. A sound you haven't heard in months. Wind. Real wind. Not just the air movement inside the ark, but wind from outside. It whistles through the small window at the top. It presses against the ark's sides. You can feel it. God sent a wind to pass over the earth, and the waters began to subside. The change is slow, imperceptible from day to day, but over weeks you notice. The rocking of the ark is different, less violent, more stable, as if the waters are calming. Hope. That fragile thing you've been trying to keep alive flickers stronger. Something's changing, you say to your wife one evening. The water is going down. I can feel it. She wants to believe you. You can see it in her eyes. But she's afraid to hope. Hope hurts when it's disappointed. It's safer to expect nothing. But Noah confirms it. God is moving, he says. The waters are receding. I don't know how long it will take, but it's happening. The family's energy shifts. There's a lightness that wasn't there before. Smiles come more easily. The work doesn't feel quite as oppressive. You're moving towards something now, not just enduring endlessly. On the 17th day of the 7th month, Noah is keeping careful track. Now you feel a jolt. The ark shudders. There's a grinding sound. Wood against something solid. For a terrifying moment, you think the ark is breaking apart. Everyone freezes. The animals sense the change and become agitated. But then you realize the ark has come to rest on something. Ground, solid ground beneath the water. You've stopped moving. After months of constant floating, constant rocking, you're suddenly still. The sensation is disorienting. You've grown so accustomed to the motion that stillness feels wrong. Some people actually feel nauseous from the lack of movement, the same way the initial rocking made you sick. You're resting on the mountains of Ararat. The text will record this, the exact day. This is a moment of such importance that it will be remembered for thousands of years. But you don't know that yet. You just know you're on solid ground again. Except you still can't leave. The water is still too high. The door remains sealed. You can't see anything from the window except sky and water, so you wait more. But now the waiting feels different. Now you know it's not forever. Now you have evidence that God is bringing you toward the end. 40 days pass. 40 days of resting on solid ground while the water continues to slowly recede. And then Noah opens the window. Not the door that's still sealed by God, but the window, that small opening at the top. He can reach it from inside with a ladder. Fresh air pours in. Real outside air. Not the stale, animal-scented air you've been breathing for months. Fresh air. You climb up to breathe it, to feel it on your face. It's the most glorious sensation. Clean air. Air that hasn't been recycled through hundreds of animal lungs. Air that smells of sky and water and possibility. Noah releases a raven. You watch it fly out the window, its black wings catching the light. It flies back and forth, the text says, back and forth. Maybe it finds places to land floating debris, animal carcasses. Maybe it returns to the ark periodically for rest, but it doesn't stay inside. It has options now. 7 days later, Noah sends out a dove. You watch it go. This beautiful white bird flying out into a world that's been completely transformed. Will it find land? Will it find a place to rest? Evening comes. You watch the window anxiously. And then you see it, the dove returning. It flies back through the window, and Noah reaches out and takes it in. It found no place to rest. The water is still covering everything. But the fact that it returned, that it came back to the ark, fills you with strange emotion. Even the bird knows the ark is safety. Home, refuge. Another 7 days pass. The waiting is excruciating now. You're so close to the end. But not quite there yet. Noah sends the dove out again. This time, when it returns in the evening, it's carrying something. An olive leaf, fresh, green. newly plucked. You stare at it. This tiny leaf. This bit of green in a world that's been gray and brown and dark for so long. Somewhere out there a tree is growing. An olive tree has survived or new growth has emerged. Plants are returning. Life is returning. The family gathers around to look at this leaf, to touch it gently, to smell it. It smells like earth, like growing things, like hope. Some people weep, others laugh. The emotional release after months of tension is overwhelming. This leaf is proof, tangible, visible proof that the world is being renewed. You hold it carefully, this precious leaf, and you think about what it represents. Not just that the water is receding, but that God is faithful, that He didn't just judge. He's restoring, creating new life from the destruction. Another 7 days. The third time Noah sends out the dove, and it doesn't return. You wait all evening, all night. The next day, it's gone. It found somewhere to land, somewhere to build a nest, somewhere to live. The land is ready. But still you wait, because the door is sealed, because God hasn't given permission to leave yet. You're learning patience in these final days, learning that God's timing, not your preference, is what matters. Noah removes the covering from the ark. More light pours in. You can see now, really see. After so long in dimness, the brightness hurts your eyes, but it's glorious pain. And you look out at a world you don't recognize. Everything is covered in mud and silt. The landscape has been completely rearranged. Mountains have been worn down. Valleys have been filled in. Nothing looks familiar. The old world is gone, buried under layers of sediment and water and judgment. This is a new world, a clean slate, a second chance for creation. But you still can't leave. Not yet. You wait, watching the land dry, watching puddles evaporate, watching the mud begin to harden. You can see it happening now. Progress, movement toward the moment of freedom. And you know with certainty now that the moment is coming. Soon, very soon, the door will open. You'll step out. You'll breathe free air and stand on solid ground and begin again. Soon. The land is dry. You can see it from the window. The mud has hardened. There are patches of ground that look solid, walkable. The water has drained away enough that you could, theoretically, leave the ark and survive. But the door remains sealed. This is perhaps the hardest waiting of all. The waiting when the end is visible, but not yet permitted. When you can see freedom, but can't reach it. When every fiber of your being screams to leave, to escape, to run out into the open air, but you have to stay, because God sealed the door, and only God can open it. It's been 1 year, more than 1 year, actually. Genesis records the exact timing with careful precision. You entered the ark in the 600th year of Noah's life, in the 2nd month, on the 17th day. And now it's the 601st year, 2nd month, 27th day. 1 year and 10 days. That's how long you've been inside. You do the math over and over. 375 days, 12.5 months, more than 50 weeks. Over a year of your life spent in this wooden box. The children are taller. You've watched them grow in this confined space. Their faces are thinner, more mature. This experience has aged them beyond their years. The adults are grayer, more worn. You catch glimpses of yourself reflected in water buckets, and you barely recognize the face looking back, gaunt, pale, lined with stress and exhaustion. But you've survived, all 8 of you, against all odds, against the crushing weight of confinement and monotony and psychological pressure. You've survived. The animals are restless. They sense the change. They smell the outside air coming through the window. Their instincts are telling them to leave, to spread out, to return to their natural habitats. Some of them pace constantly. Others call out more frequently. The energy in the ark has shifted from resigned endurance to anticipatory anxiety. You're checking the door multiple times a day now, running your hands over it, testing it. Even though you know it won't open, you can't help yourself. The need to leave is overwhelming. You have dreams about wide open spaces, about running through fields, about seeing the horizon without wooden walls blocking your view. You wake from these dreams with your heart racing, and for a moment you forget where you are. Then reality crashes back, and you're still in the ark. But not for much longer. It can't be much longer. The family makes preparations. You organize the animals by species, by what order they'll be released. You prepare to disassemble parts of the ark, to create ramps for the larger creatures. You pack up your few belongings, ready to carry them out. Everything is ready. You're just waiting for God to give the word. Noah prays constantly now, asking, listening, waiting for divine instruction. He's been faithful this entire time. He won't presume to open the door on his own authority. If God sealed it, God must open it. The sounds from outside have changed. You hear birds. Real birds, not the ones inside the ark. They're flying past, calling to each other. Life is returning to the world. You hear wind rustling through vegetation. Plants are growing out there. Trees are budding. The earth is healing itself with remarkable speed. Sometimes you hear what might be animals, distant calls, creatures that survived on floating debris, perhaps, or that are returning from wherever they sheltered. You don't know how it all works, but life is out there, and you're in here. The frustration builds. Why the waiting? The land is dry. You could leave. Why won't God open the door? But then you remember, God's timing has been perfect throughout this entire ordeal. He knew when to send the animals, when to close the door, when to start the rain, when to stop it, when to send the wind, when to rest the ark on Ararat. He knows when the door should open too. So you practice patience, not the resigned patience of the endless floating months, but active patience, expectant patience. The patience of someone standing at a starting line, muscles tensed, waiting for the signal to run. You're poised, ready, alert, waiting. And then, finally, on the 27th day of the 2nd month, Noah straightens from his prayers. His face is transformed. There's light in his eyes that you haven't seen in over a year. God has spoken, he says simply. It's time. The words hit you like a physical force. Time. It's time. After all this waiting, all this endurance, all this survival, it's time to leave. The family moves toward the door together. Your heart is pounding so hard you can feel it in your throat. Your hands are shaking. This is real. This is actually happening. Noah places his hands on the door that God sealed over a year ago, the door that's kept you safe and trapped you simultaneously, and he pushes. It opens. Light floods in. Not the dim gray light you've grown accustomed to, not the weak glow of oil lamps, but full, brilliant, overwhelming sunlight. You throw your hands up to shield your eyes. It's too bright, painfully bright. Your eyes, adjusted to darkness for over a year, can't handle it. Tears stream down your face. You blink rapidly, trying to adjust, but it's too much. Slowly, slowly, your eyes adapt. You lower your hands, squint against the brightness, and finally you can see the world outside. It's completely different from the world you remember. The landscape has been transformed. What used to be valleys might now be hills. What used to be forests is now bare ground. The entire topography has been rearranged by the force of the water. Everything is covered in a layer of dried mud and silt. Gray-brown earth stretches as far as you can see. Here and there, patches of green are emerging. New growth, grass, small plants, the beginning of vegetation, but mostly it's empty, barren, silent. The silence is the most striking thing. You've lived with constant animal noise for over a year, but now, stepping out into the open air, you hear almost nothing. A distant bird call, wind rustling through the sparse new plant growth. That's it. No human sounds, no voices. No cities or towns or villages. No markets or conversations or laughter. No children playing. No workers building. No sounds of civilization. Because there is no civilization anymore. You're it. 8 people. That's all that's left of humanity. The weight of that realization is staggering. You take your first steps on solid ground. Your legs wobble. You've lost your land legs like a sailor too long at sea. The ground doesn't move beneath you, and your body doesn't know how to process that. You stumble. Catch yourself. Take another careful step. It's difficult. Your muscles have atrophied. Your balance is off. What should be natural walking on solid ground has become strange and challenging. But you keep going, step after step, moving away from the ark. And with each step, something in your chest loosens, expands. You're out. You're finally out. The air is fresh and clean and cool. You breathe deeply, filling your lungs with air that hasn't been filtered through animal bodies and wooden walls. It's glorious. You breathe again and again, unable to get enough of this fresh, clean air. The sky is blue, perfectly, brilliantly blue. You'd forgotten how blue the sky could be. You stare up at it, turning in circles, taking in the vast expanse of color above you. No wooden ceiling, no confined space, just endless sky. Your wife is beside you, also turning in circles, also staring at the sky. She's crying, laughing, both at once. The emotion is too big to contain. The children run. They just run, stumbling on weak legs, falling, getting up, running again. They're shouting with joy. After being confined for so long, the ability to simply run in a straight line without hitting a wall is overwhelming. The animals are being released now, one by one, pair by pair, species by species. The birds go first. They explode from the ark in a flutter of wings and take to the sky. You watch them scatter in all directions, spreading out across the new world. They'll find places to nest, places to feed. They'll multiply and fill the earth again. The smaller animals go next, rabbits hopping cautiously at first, then bounding away with increasing confidence. Foxes trotting into the distance. Rodents scattering in all directions. Each species heading out to find its place in this renewed world. The larger animals are more cautious. The elephants stand at the ark's entrance, seeming hesitant. They've been confined for so long, the open space might actually frighten them. But eventually they lumber forward, their massive feet leaving deep impressions in the soft earth. The predators are released last. You watch them go with mixed feelings. You've cared for these animals for over a year, fed them, kept them alive, and now they're leaving, returning to their nature, to hunting and killing and living wild. The lions walk out with regal grace. They pause, sniff the air, and then move off into the distance. The wolves follow, the bears, all the creatures that could have killed you but didn't. All the evidence of God's protection. You realize you'll probably never see most of these animals again. This is goodbye. After sharing such an intimate experience, surviving the end of the world together, you're parting ways. It's sad, but it's also right. This is what they were saved for. Not to live confined in a boat, but to go forth and multiply and fill the earth. Within hours, most of the animals are gone, disappeared into the landscape, finding water sources, finding food, finding shelter, following their instincts to survive and thrive. The ark that was so crowded is now almost empty. Just 8 humans and a few animals that are slower to leave. You turn and look at the ark, your home for over a year, your prison and your salvation. It's massive, even more impressive from the outside now that you can see it fully. 3 stories of gopher wood and pitch, scarred by wind and water, but still standing, still sound. It saved your life. You owe this wooden structure everything, but you also never want to go inside it again. The family gathers together, standing on the slope of the mountain. 8 people, the only people, the last humans, the new beginning of humanity. Noah speaks. We need to thank God for his mercy, for his protection, for bringing us through. And you know what's coming next. An altar, a sacrifice. The proper response to deliverance this profound. You all work together to gather stones. Your muscles protest you're weak, out of shape, but you push through. You build an altar right there on the slope of Ararat. A place of worship, a place of thanksgiving. Noah takes some of the clean animals, one of each of the clean birds and animals, the ones that came in groups of 7 instead of 2. This is why there were extras. The animals are sacrificed, their blood is spilled, their bodies are burned. Smoke rises into the clean blue sky. It's the first sacrifice after the flood, the first act of worship in the new world, and it matters deeply. The smell of burnt offering fills the air. It's different from any smell you've encountered in over a year. It's the smell of worship, of atonement, of relationship with God being restored and renewed. Genesis records that God smelled the pleasing aroma, that he responded to this sacrifice, that he made a promise in response to Noah's worship. Never again will I curse the ground because of humans. Never again will I destroy all living creatures as I have done. And then God makes a covenant, a promise, a guarantee. He sets his rainbow in the clouds as a sign, a reminder that he will never again flood the entire earth. You'll see that rainbow soon, when the rain comes again, because rain must come for crops to grow. You'll see the colors arc across the sky, and you'll remember. You'll remember the flood, the ark, the year of confinement, the door opening. This moment. But right now, standing on the mountain with your family, with the smoke of sacrifice rising, with the clean air filling your lungs, with solid ground beneath your feet, with endless sky above you, you feel something you haven't felt in a long time. Peace, relief, gratitude. You survived. Against all odds, despite everything, you survived. And now you have a mission, a purpose, a calling. Go forth and multiply. Fill the earth. Subdue it. Start again. Build a new world from the ashes of the old one. It's overwhelming. It's terrifying. It's impossible. But then again, so was surviving the flood. And you did that. So you take a deep breath of that fresh, clean air. You look at your wife, your children, your extended family. You look at the vast empty world stretching before you, and you take the first step toward your new life, toward the future, toward hope. Let's talk about the women we never talk about. The Bible tells us their role. They were the wives of Noah's sons. Shem had a wife. Ham had a wife. Japheth had a wife. Along with Noah's wife, that makes 4 women who survived the flood. But their names? The Bible doesn't record them. Not once. They're simply the wives. Think about that for a moment. 4 women who survived the end of the world. 4 women who became the mothers of all nations that would follow. 4 women without whom humanity could not have continued. And we don't even know their names. Some extra biblical texts try to fill in the gaps. The Book of Jubilees, an ancient Jewish text, gives them names. Noah's wife was Emzara. Shem's wife was Sediketel Bab. Ham's wife was Nal Tama, UK. Japheth's wife was Adatonizes. Whether these names are historically accurate or later traditions, we can't know. But they remind us that these women were real, individual people with identities and histories and personalities, not just the wives. So tonight, let's imagine their story. Let's give voice to the forgotten women of the Ark. You're one of these women. Let's say you're Shem's wife. Your name, your real name, the one your mother whispered when you were born, the one your father called you, the one you've carried your whole life, has been lost to history. But you had one. You were someone. You were young when you married Shem. He was Noah's son, part of a family that everyone in the community thought was strange. His father talked to God, built that ridiculous boat, preached about judgment and righteousness. But Shem was kind, strong, faithful. You loved him despite the mockery that came with being part of Noah's family. When Noah told his sons about the flood, Shem told you, and you had a choice to make. A choice that the Bible doesn't really acknowledge, but that must have been agonizing. Believe and board the ark, or refuse and face the flood with the rest of humanity. You chose to believe, to trust your husband, to trust his father, to trust the God you couldn't see, but who apparently spoke to Noah. But that choice meant leaving everything. Your parents, your siblings, your friends, everyone you'd ever known. The day you boarded the ark, you said goodbye to your mother. You hugged her, and she was crying, and you were crying, and she was begging you not to do this. Don't throw your life away on this madness, she pleaded. Stay here with us. But you couldn't. You'd made your choice. You believed. Even though doubt twisted in your stomach, even though part of you wondered if you were making the biggest mistake of your life, you chose to board the ark, your mother's face watching you go. That's an image that will haunt you forever, because she died. They all died. Your parents, your siblings, your childhood friends, the women you grew up with, the old woman who taught you to weave, the children you used to watch. All of them. dead, while you survived. The guilt of that is crushing. Why did you deserve to live when they deserved to die? What made you special? What made you chosen? Nothing, really. You just happened to marry into Noah's family. That's it. That's the only reason you're alive. In the Ark, this guilt sits heavy on your chest. You work alongside the other women, Noah's wife, Ham's wife, Japheth's wife, and you wonder if they feel it too. Do they dream about the faces of the people they left behind? Do they wake up crying? Do they whisper prayers for the souls of their dead mothers? You don't talk about it, not directly. But sometimes in the dim lamplight, when the men are sleeping and it's just you four women, someone will start crying, and the others will gather around. No words necessary. You all understand. You're survivors, but surviving comes with a cost. The work in the Ark falls on everyone, but the women have specific roles that the historical accounts often miss. You're managing food preparation, taking the dried stores and trying to make them into something edible, rationing carefully because you don't know how long this will last, making sure everyone gets enough nutrition to survive, even though the food is bland and monotonous. You're caring for the sick. When someone develops a rash or a fever or an infection, it's the women who tend them. You make poultices from the herbs you stored. You change dressings. You sit with them through the night when they're delirious with fever. You're maintaining hygiene as much as possible in impossible conditions. You're washing clothes in precious water. You're helping each other through monthly cycles. You're braiding hair to keep it from becoming completely unmanageable. Small acts of care that keep humanity human. And you're holding this family together emotionally. When tensions rise, when conflicts threaten to tear the family apart, it's often the women who mediate, who soothe, who remind everyone that you need each other. Noah gets credit for building the Ark and leading the family, and he deserves that credit. But you know, all four of you women know that the family would have fallen apart without you. The relationship between you four women is complex. You're sisters-in-law, but in the Ark you become something more. Co-survivors, the only other women in existence. Your bond is deeper than friendship. It's survival-based, necessary, intense. But it's not always easy. You come from different families, different backgrounds. You have different personalities, different ways of coping with stress. Sometimes you clash. Sometimes you say things you regret. Sometimes you need space from each other that you simply cannot have. Noah's wife has a particular burden. She's the oldest. She's seen the most. She remembers more of the world before it became completely wicked. And she's watched her husband dedicate decades to this Ark project. She's tired, so tired. And sometimes she snaps at the younger women, and you have to remind yourself she's under enormous pressure. Ham's wife is angry. She's angry about everything. The flood, the death, the confinement. She does her work, but there's a bitterness in her that worries you. You wonder what will happen when you finally leave the Ark. Will she be able to let go of that anger, or will it poison her? Japheth's wife is young, younger than you. She was barely an adult when this started. Sometimes you catch her staring at nothing, and you know she's processing trauma in ways she doesn't have words for yet. You try to mother her a little, even though you're not her mother. She needs it. And you? You're trying to hold yourself together by being useful, by working, by focusing on tasks. If you stop, if you think too much, the grief will overwhelm you. So you keep moving, keep working, keep pushing the emotions down. But at night, when you're lying next to Shem in the darkness, listening to animals breathe and your family sleep, the emotions surface, and you cry silently, your body shaking with sobs you're trying to muffle. Shem holds you, doesn't ask questions, just holds you. And somehow, that's enough to keep you going. After the flood, your role becomes even more critical, though history will barely mention it. You and the other 3 women are now responsible for repopulating the entire earth. Think about the weight of that. Every human who will ever exist from this point forward will be descended from one of you 4 women. You're the mothers of all nations, the matriarchs of humanity's second chance. The children you'll bear aren't just your children. They're the future, the only future humanity has. The pressure of that is immense. What if you can't have children? What if something goes wrong? What if the genetic bottleneck causes problems? These aren't questions you can answer. You just have to trust and try. The relationships between your children will determine the future of humanity. The sons you bear, the daughters, they'll need to marry each other, cousins marrying cousins, to continue the species. It's uncomfortable to think about, but it's necessary. There's no one else. You teach your children everything you remember about the old world. The good parts, the beautiful parts. Yes, humanity became wicked, but there was good too. Love, kindness, beauty. You want your children to know that, to learn from both the wickedness that brought judgment and the goodness that's worth preserving. You teach your daughters to weave, to cook, to care for homes and families, not because women can only do these things, but because these skills are necessary for survival. Everyone needs to know them. You teach your sons to respect women, to honor their wives, to remember that their mothers survived the end of the world and helped rebuild it. Women aren't weak. Women are essential. And slowly, painfully, you build a new life, a new world, new communities, new traditions. But you never forget. None of you 4 women ever forget. You never forget the faces of the mothers you left behind, the sisters who drowned, the friends who mocked you for believing Noah's crazy story. You never forget the smell of the ark, the darkness, the year of confinement, the psychological toll. You never forget standing on that mountain, looking at an empty world, and knowing that somehow you had to fill it. Sometimes in the years that follow, the 4 of you women gather together. Your husbands are off building or planning or discussing theology, and you sit together in the sun, older now, grayer, more warm, and you don't need to say anything. You just sit. Survivors who know what survival cost. Women whose names were forgotten but whose strength made everything else possible. You are the forgotten family, the unnamed women, the mothers of nations who history barely acknowledges, but you know the truth. You were there. You survived. You rebuilt. You mattered. And someday, thousands of years in the future, someone will tell your story. Not with your names, maybe, but with honor, with recognition of what you endured and what you gave. You are the unnamed mothers of humanity's second chance, and your story deserves to be remembered. The first thing Noah does upon leaving the ark isn't rest, isn't celebrate, isn't collapse in relief and exhaustion. He builds an altar. Genesis 8:20 records it simply. Then Noah built an altar to the Lord, and taking some of all the clean animals and clean birds, he sacrificed burnt offerings on it. But let's slow down. Let's examine what's actually happening here. Because this moment, this altar, this sacrifice, it changes everything. You've just spent over a year in the Ark. You're physically exhausted, emotionally drained. Your body is weak from confinement and inadequate diet. Your mind is reeling from the transition from enclosed darkness to open sky. Any reasonable person would want to rest, to set up shelter, to find food and water and establish some kind of basic survival situation before doing anything else. But Noah doesn't do any of that. His first priority, before anything else, is worship. Think about what that means. After everything he's been through, the decades of mockery while building the Ark, the horror of hearing people die outside, the year of confinement and responsibility and stress, his first impulse is to thank God, not to demand answers about why it had to be this way, not to complain about the difficulty, not to ask for special blessings going forward, just pure worship, pure thanksgiving. You watch as Noah begins gathering stones. He's moving slowly, his 600-year-old body, and yes, he's 601 now, is not what it used to be. His hands shake slightly as he lifts each rock, but he persists. The family helps. All of you gathering stones from the muddy mountainside. You're building something sacred, something that matters. Your first act in the new world is an act of worship. The stones are still muddy from the flood. You stack them carefully, building up. This isn't a small altar. This is substantial. Multiple levels. A proper place for sacrifice. Your hands are covered in mud. Your clothes are filthy. You're exhausted, but there's something right about this. Something necessary. This altar is a statement. We survived because of God. We acknowledge His sovereignty. We're grateful for His mercy. But it's also something deeper. It's an act of covenant renewal. It's humanity recommitting to relationship with God. It's Noah on behalf of all humanity, because remember, there is no other humanity except this family saying, we choose you, we worship you, we dedicate this new world to you. The altar is finished. It's rough, not artistic or beautiful, but it's functional and it's sacred. Now comes the hard part. Noah calls for the animals. Not just any animals, the clean animals and birds, the ones that came in sevens instead of twos. You've spent over a year caring for these creatures, feeding them, protecting them, developing relationships with them. Some of them feel like pets, like friends, and now Noah is going to kill them. You watch as he selects them, one of each kind of clean animal, one of each kind of clean bird, the sheep that always came when you called, the dove that perched on your shoulder, the cow that was gentle and patient during milking. They trust Noah. They've learned to trust humans during the Ark journey. So when he calls them, they come, docile, obedient, unaware of what's about to happen. Your throat tightens. You know this is necessary. You know this is right, but it still hurts. The knife flashes in the sunlight. The first animal is slain. Blood spills onto the altar. Dark, red, the price of atonement. In ancient Near Eastern culture, blood was life itself. When blood was spilled in sacrifice, it represented life being given back to God, the acknowledgement that all life belongs to Him, that we exist at His pleasure, that we owe Him everything. Noah works methodically, one animal at a time, one bird at a time. The killing is quick, efficient, as merciful as it can be, but it's still death. still violence, still blood and life draining away. The carcasses are placed on the altar. Wood is stacked underneath. Fire is kindled, and then the burning begins. The smell hits you first. Burning flesh, burning hair and feathers. It's acrid, intense, not pleasant exactly, but somehow meaningful. This is the smell of worship, the smell of sacrifice, the smell of relationship with God being restored. The smoke rises, thick and dark at first, then lighter as the fire catches fully. It rises straight up into the clear blue sky, a column of smoke that can probably be seen for miles if there were anyone to see it. But there isn't, just 8 humans and the animals that survived. This is a private moment between Noah's family and God. The rest of creation is witness to it, but there are no other human observers. The fire burns hot. You can feel the heat from several feet away. The flames consume the offerings completely. This is a burnt offering, olah, in Hebrew, meaning that which goes up. The entire animal is burned. Nothing is kept back. It's complete surrender, complete devotion. You stand watching the smoke rise, and you think about what this sacrifice means. These animals didn't do anything wrong. They didn't sin. They didn't deserve to die. But they died anyway, in the place of humans who did deserve judgment. This is substitutionary atonement. The innocent dying for the guilty. The clean animal taking the place of the unclean human. And it points forward, though you don't know it yet, to another sacrifice thousands of years in the future. Another innocent one dying for the guilty. Another life poured out for atonement. The ultimate sacrifice that will make all these animal sacrifices obsolete. But that's far in the future. Right now, on this mountain, in this new world, this is what worship looks like. Blood, fire, smoke. Life given back to the life giver. The burning takes hours. The fat sizzles and pops. The meat chars. The bones blacken. You tend the fire, adding wood when needed, keeping it hot enough to consume everything. As the day progresses, something shifts in the atmosphere. You can't quite explain it, but you feel it. A presence, a peace. God is here. God sees this worship. God is pleased. Genesis records it beautifully. The Lord smelled the pleasing aroma. Now, God doesn't have a physical nose. He doesn't need to smell smoke to know what's happening. But the language is anthropomorphic, describing God in human terms, so we can understand. God smelling the sacrifice means he received it, accepted it, was pleased by it, and his response is immediate and profound. God makes a promise, a covenant. He speaks, and Noah listens with his whole family gathered around. Never again will I curse the ground because of humans, even though every inclination of the human heart is evil from childhood. And never again will I destroy all living creatures, as I have done. Let that sink in. God is promising never to flood the entire earth again. Not because humans will become righteous, not because sin will disappear, but because of grace, because of mercy, because despite human wickedness, God chooses to show patience and restraint. The human heart is still evil. God acknowledges this. The flood didn't fix human nature. Noah and his family aren't perfect. Their descendants won't be perfect. Wickedness will rise again, but God won't respond with total destruction again. He's making a unilateral promise, a covenant that doesn't depend on human faithfulness, but on his own character. And then comes the sign. the rainbow. God sets his bow in the clouds. The Hebrew word for bow is the same word used for a war bow. God is essentially hanging up his weapon. The bow that could be used for judgment is now a sign of mercy. Whenever rain comes, and rain must come for crops to grow and life to continue, the rainbow will appear, and it will be a reminder to humans, yes, but also to God himself. When I see the bow in the clouds, I will remember my covenant. The rainbow isn't just pretty, it's a treaty sign, a guarantee, a promise written in light and water droplets. You're watching the smoke still rising, and you're processing all of this, the sacrifice, the promise, the covenant. It's overwhelming. The weight of what's happening here is almost too much to comprehend. This altar, built from muddy stones on a mountainside by an exhausted family, is the foundation of the new world. This is where everything starts, not with revenge or anger or fear, but with worship, with sacrifice, with covenant. Noah falls to his knees. He's weeping. From relief, from exhaustion, from overwhelming gratitude. He's poured out everything he had to build the ark, survive the flood, care for the animals. And now, giving back to God through sacrifice, he's pouring out even more. But in giving, he's also receiving peace, assurance, purpose, direction. The altar stands as a witness. In the days and weeks to come, you'll pass by it regularly. The stones stained with blood and ash, a reminder of this moment, of God's promise, of humanity's second chance. You'll build your homes near this altar. Your first settlements will be within sight of it. Because you don't want to forget? You can't forget. This altar represents everything, where you've been, what you've survived, and what you're building toward. When your children ask about it, you'll tell them the story, about the flood, about the ark, about stepping out into a new world, and about how the very first thing Grandfather Noah did was worship. Remember, you'll tell them, worship comes first, before anything else, before comfort or convenience or personal desire. We worship because God is worthy, because he saved us, because everything we have is a gift from him. The sacrifice is complete now. The fire has burned down to embers. The smoke has thinned to a wisp. The sun is setting, painting the sky in colors you haven't seen in over a year. And then you see it, there, in the clouds. An arc of color, red, orange, yellow, green, blue, indigo, violet. The first rainbow, God's bow, the sign of the covenant. Everyone stops, stares, points. Even the children are silent, awed by this display. It's beautiful, more beautiful than anything you've seen in so long. Color, vibrant, brilliant color. After a year of gray wood and dim lamplight, this explosion of color is almost shocking. You're crying. Everyone is crying. Not from sadness, from overwhelming emotion, from the beauty of it, from the meaning of it. This is God's signature on his promise, his seal on the covenant, his guarantee that he remembers you, that he cares, that he'll never flood the earth again. The rainbow fades as the sun sets, but the memory of it doesn't fade. It's burned into your mind, into your heart. That night, sleeping under the open sky for the first time in over a year, you dream of rainbows, of smoke rising, of altars and sacrifice and covenant, and you wake with a sense of peace you haven't felt in a long time. You're safe. You're held. You're part of something bigger than yourself. The altar on the mountain stands as proof. God was worshipped, sacrifice was offered, covenant was made, and nothing will ever be the same. Not all of the post-flood story is beautiful. Some of it is dark, troubling, the kind of story that gets skipped in children's Bibles. But we need to talk about it, because it's part of the narrative, and it teaches us something important about human nature, about sin, about how quickly things can go wrong even after miraculous deliverance. Genesis 9:20-27. Noah plants a vineyard, gets drunk, lies naked in his tent. Ham sees his father's nakedness and tells his brothers. Shem and Japheth cover Noah while walking backward. Noah wakes up, somehow knows what happened, and curses Ham's son Canaan. It's a strange, uncomfortable passage, and for thousands of years people have debated what actually happened and what it means. Let's walk through it carefully. You're settling into life after the flood. Months have passed, maybe years. Noah has planted a vineyard. This is significant. It shows he's thinking long-term, planning for the future. Grapes take time to mature. A vineyard is an investment in permanence. The grapes ripen. Noah harvests them, makes wine. This might be the first wine in the new world. Maybe it's celebratory. Maybe it's just practical wine keeps better than grape juice. Maybe Noah is trying to recreate something from the old world, a taste of what was. But here's the thing. Noah apparently doesn't know how strong the wine is, or he drinks too much, or both. The text tells us he became drunk, not tipsy, not pleasantly buzzed, drunk, intoxicated to the point of losing control. This was jarring. Noah, the righteous man who walked with God, who built the ark, who saved humanity, he's drunk, lying in his tent, naked. It's a reminder that righteousness doesn't equal perfection, that even the faithful have weaknesses, that everyone is capable of sin and poor judgment. But the real issue isn't Noah's drunkenness. It's what happens next. Ham, one of Noah's 3 sons, father of Canaan, enters his father's tent. He sees Noah lying there naked, and something happens that the text describes as seeing his father's nakedness. Now, this phrase in Hebrew is more loaded than it might seem in English. Throughout the Old Testament, seeing nakedness or uncovering nakedness often refers to sexual violation. It's used in Leviticus to describe incest and other sexual sins. So scholars debate. Did Ham just accidentally see his father naked? Or did something worse happen? Some rabbinical sources suggest Ham castrated Noah, explaining why Noah only had 3 sons after the flood when he could have had more. Others suggest sexual violation of some kind. Still others think Ham simply saw his father naked and, instead of discreetly covering him, went and mocked him to his brothers. We don't know exactly what happened. The text is deliberately vague, but we know it was serious. Serious enough that when Noah woke up and knew what his youngest son had done to him, he pronounced a curse. You're Ham's wife. You're watching this family drama unfold, and you're terrified because you understand what's happening. This isn't just a family squabble. This is something that will have lasting, devastating consequences. Ham comes to you after seeing Noah. There's something in his expression. Anger, shame, malicious glee. You can't quite read it, but it unsettles you. My father is lying drunk and naked in his tent, he says. And the way he says it, there's mockery in his voice. Contempt. This is the man who endured the flood with you, who led the family, who heard from God, and Ham is mocking him for a moment of weakness. You feel uncomfortable. This doesn't feel right. Yes, Noah made a mistake. Yes, getting drunk was foolish. But he's still the patriarch, still deserving of respect, still your father-in-law who saved your life. Ham goes and tells Shem and Japheth. You watch them react. Their faces show horror, not at Noah's drunkenness, but at Ham's attitude, at how he's handled this situation. Shem and Japheth take a garment. They place it over their shoulders, and they walk backward into Noah's tent, faces turned away, and cover their father. They're preserving his dignity, honoring him even in his moment of shame. The contrast couldn't be more stark. Ham exposed, Shem and Japheth covered. Ham mocked, Shem and Japheth honored. When Noah wakes up and the text says he somehow knew what his youngest son had done to him, his response is immediate and severe. Cursed be Canaan. The lowest of slaves will he be to his brothers. Wait, Canaan? Ham's son? Not Ham himself? This has confused interpreters for millennia. Why curse the son for the father's sin? Why not curse Ham directly? Some suggest that Ham's line was cursed through Canaan because that's how family curses worked in ancient culture. The consequences of a father's sin fall on his descendants. Others suggest Noah couldn't curse Ham directly because God had already blessed all three sons after the flood. Still others think Canaan personally participated in whatever happened or showed similar character flaws. The truth is, we don't know exactly why, but we know the curse was pronounced and it had lasting consequences. The descendants of Canaan became the Canaanites, the people who occupied the promised land. The people Israel would later be commanded to drive out because of their wickedness. The curse played out in history, but here's where we need to be very, very careful, because this passage has been horrifically misused throughout history. For centuries, some people used the curse of Ham to justify slavery, particularly the enslavement of African peoples. They claimed that black people were descended from Ham, and therefore the curse meant they were meant to be slaves. This is completely, utterly wrong. It's bad theology. It's bad interpretation. It's evil racism dressed up in biblical language. First, the curse was on Canaan, not Ham. Second, the Canaanites were a Middle Eastern people, not African. Third, even if someone were descended from Canaan, a curse pronounced thousands of years ago doesn't justify enslaving someone. Fourth, and most importantly, Christ redeems us from every curse. No one is cursed forever. Grace breaks curses. The misuse of this passage to justify slavery and racism is one of the darkest chapters in church history. It's a reminder that Scripture can be twisted to justify evil if we're not careful, that we must always interpret the Bible through the lens of love, justice, and the full revelation of Christ. But back to the original story, back to Ham's tent, where you're living with the consequences of your husband's sin. The family is fractured now. There's a division that wasn't there before. Shem and Japheth on one side, Ham on the other. The unity that got you through the ark, through the flood, through the early days of rebuilding, it's broken. Ham is angry. He feels the curse is unfair. He did what he did, whatever exactly it was, but why should his son suffer? Why should generations of his descendants bear the weight of one moment? You try to counsel him. Maybe if you apologize, if you humble yourself before your father, if you seek reconciliation, but Ham's pride won't let him. He's bitter, resentful. He feels wronged even though he was the one who wronged his father. This is how sin works. It blinds us, makes us the victim in our own story, makes us unable to see our own fault while magnifying others' faults. Your children sense the tension. They know something is wrong, even if they don't understand exactly what. The family gatherings aren't the same anymore. There's awkwardness, forced politeness, underneath currents of anger and hurt. You watch your son Canaan growing up under this curse. He's a good boy, innocent. He didn't do anything wrong, but he bears the weight of his father's sin and his grandfather's curse. It's not fair. Life isn't fair. Sin has consequences that ripple outward, affecting people who weren't even involved in the original transgression. You try to shield Canaan from it. Try to give him love and security. Try to teach him about God and righteousness, despite the family drama. But you can't fully protect him from the reality that he's cursed. As the years pass, the family lines diverge. Shem's descendants, Ham's descendants, Japheth's descendants. They spread out geographically. They develop different cultures, different languages eventually after Babel, different destinies. And you wonder, how different would it have been if Ham had just covered his father, if he'd shown respect instead of contempt, if he'd honored instead of mocked? One decision, one moment, consequences that echo through generations. This story is dark because it reminds us that the flood didn't fix human nature. Sign didn't drown in the waters. It survived in the ark, in the hearts of the 8 people who were saved. Noah got drunk. Ham dishonored his father. Noah cursed his grandson. Sin upon sin upon sin. The new world was only months or years old, and already it was broken. Already humanity was showing the same patterns that led to the flood in the first place. This is the tragedy and the hope of the gospel. The tragedy is that we can't save ourselves. We can't bootstrap our way to righteousness. Even a global reset doesn't fix the human heart. But the hope is that God knew this. He knew we'd fail again. He knew the flood wasn't the final solution. He knew a better sacrifice was needed, a better covering, a better way to deal with sin and shame. Thousands of years after Ham and Noah, another son would be shamed, stripped naked, exposed, mocked, but he would bear it willingly. He would take the curse upon himself so that everyone descendants of Shem, Ham, and Japheth alike could be freed from every curse. Where Shem and Japheth covered their father with a garment, Christ covers us with his righteousness. Where Noah's curse brought judgment, Christ's sacrifice brings redemption. The story of Ham is dark, but it points us toward the light, toward the one who breaks every curse, who heals every family fracture, who deals with our sin and shame in a way that brings life instead of death. You live with the consequences of that day in the tent for the rest of your life. The family never fully heals. The curse over Canaan plays out in history. The pain is real, but you hold on to hope. Hope that God is bigger than human sin, that his purposes can't be thwarted by our failures, that somehow, some way, redemption is possible even for the cursed. And you're right, because thousands of years later in the genealogy of Jesus, you find a name that shocks you. Rahab, a Canaanite, one of Canaan's descendants, a woman who was part of the cursed line, and she's included in the lineage of the Messiah. The curse-bearer becomes an ancestor of the curse-breaker. Grace wins, always, eventually, completely. Even in the darkest stories, grace finds a way. And now, you've walked where Noah walked. You've felt the weight of the pitch in your hands during construction. You've heard the cacophony of animals boarding. You've experienced the terror of the door sealing shut. You've endured the darkness, the smell, the endless monotony of survival in a floating wooden box. You've felt the motion sickness from constant rocking. You've worked through exhaustion to feed and clean and maintain. You've faced the psychological breaking points. You've waded through 150 days of floating. You've seen the dove return with an olive leaf. You've stepped onto solid ground with legs that forgot how to walk on land. You've stood at the altar of sacrifice, watching smoke rise. You've witnessed the first rainbow arcing across the sky. You've been there for the covenant promise that God would never flood the earth again. And you've seen the shadow side too. The family fractures, the curse pronounced, the reminder that even the saved are still broken. You've lived a year in the ark, and now you understand why you wouldn't have lasted a day. Not because you're not strong enough, not because you lack faith, but because the reality of Noah's Ark was so far beyond anything we imagine. The physical toll, the psychological weight, the spiritual testing. But here's what you've also learned. You can survive more than you think, with God's help, with family, with purpose, with faith that holds even when understanding fails. The Ark story isn't really about a boat. It's about judgment and mercy existing together. It's about God taking sin seriously enough to judge it, while loving humanity enough to save a remnant. It's about human failure and divine faithfulness. It's about you, because you're living in your own kind of ark right now. Whatever confined space you're in, whether it's illness, grief, financial hardship, relational brokenness, or just the grinding monotony of difficult circumstances, you're in your own version of the ark. And God sees you there, just like he saw Noah, just like he remembered Noah after 150 days. He sees you. He remembers you. He hasn't forgotten. The door will open. Maybe not today, maybe not tomorrow, but it will open. God finishes what he starts. He doesn't save you just to leave you floating forever. And when your door opens, when you step out into whatever new world awaits you, remember the altar. Remember worship first. Remember gratitude. Remember that everything you have is grace. Rest now in the knowledge of that faithfulness. You're held, even in the ark, even in the darkness, even in the waiting. You're held by the same hands that shut Noah in and brought him out safely. Those hands hold you too. So let your breathing slow. Let your body relax. Let your mind stop churning through worries and what-ifs. You've taken a long journey tonight, through ancient waters, through impossible survival, through death and rebirth, and now it's time to rest. Let your breathing match the gentle rocking of the ark, back and forth, back and forth. Safe in the storm, held by faithful hands, drift now into peace, into sleep, into the arms of the one who saves and keeps and never forgets. Rest, dear traveler, rest.